And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. The informal word bestie, shorthand for best friend, gained widespread usage in the 1990s and became mainstream with social media, evolving from BFF to bestie and back again as a friendly way to connect with audiences. We begin today's Open Connection with co-founder of Project Bestie, Christy Ebling.
PNGI is a small local agency that coaches and empowers adults with diverse abilities. The acronym stands for the Provincial Networking Group. And I came into ownership under complete, just unexpected situation. So I had worked very closely with a man named Chris Arnold. Lots of people locally probably know him. He was instrumental in our field in creating policy and procedure for employment for people with disabilities. So Chris and I worked together for 20 plus years as he was my behavior consultant in my previous role. And in 2015, I left my job and spoke with him and started working with him in 2016. And so I was the second in charge at PNGI, and in 2017, he died unexpectedly. So being that I was second in charge, being that his wife didn't want to take it over, she asked if I'd be interested in purchasing it. And this happened on November 24th, 2017, less than 2 months before the accident happened. I was a Northwest Director, Quality Service for an agency called Thompson Community Services, so I oversaw the North. I saw Terrace, Rupert, Kitimat. Her and I are working through a thing called Project Bestie from a situation that happened more personally to her. So I'm here supporting her and we're here talking about it. And this is the first time in 7 years that she's publicly speaking about it. And then one of my most favorite collectively, we spoke at an event. We called it Turning Pain into Power. So it was a really intended to be a very inspirational day, but it was where she shared her story publicly for the first time. So we were really lucky. We were surrounded by, I think, about 30 individuals that came to the event. It was extremely powerful. My best friend is super funny. And so she's able to put light on grief in a way that is provides hope. So I get to be her partner in crime, having conversation. It was a really interesting journey. And I'm very grateful she allowed me the opportunity to grieve with her, because my daughter and her daughter were best friends. Her daughter and her husband passed away in an accident. So it was a really interesting journey. By then, she had moved to Vancouver Island. She had previously lived in Terrace, that's where we met. So we had this huge distance in our friendship, but we stayed so connected, like you said. Like there's just some people you connect with on a deeper level, and her and I just had a really beautiful relationship before this happened. But certainly 100%, I felt, not to the degree she felt it, of course, but I felt her pain, for sure. Her and her husband and her two girls had moved from Kelowna to Terrace. And so we had met at gymnastics. Our younger daughters were gymnastic people at Terrace Peaks. And so we would sit in the stands and we ended up hanging out and just fast friends. So now we're at 19 because the accident was 7 years ago, but it was 12 years. So some people have like lifelong friends. It wasn't that long. Shanna's husband had a heart attack. And that's why they ended up moving to Terrace, because they needed to they lived in Kelowna. It was really crazy, you know, how keeping up with the Joneses is what she'd say, like just constantly trying to get from point A to point B, and they had all this family. And so they were looking for a location that had affordable housing. Terrace was affordable when she moved here 19 years ago, and just a location where they'd have the opportunity to connect and spend time with their families. And so at that point, actually, Henny Ebling, who is from your radio station, she was diagnosed with cancer. So I was very busy taking care of my ex-husband now's mom, and I was creating my profession. I was working really hard. I'd become a manager in my job, and I just really wanted to make a difference in the world. And so she was our babysitter. She took care of my kids for like 3 years. So not even just Saturday play dates. She would pick them up and she would bring them home. And after I got off work or got back from the hospital or whatever it was, I would go there. So she taught my kids many lessons, one of which I love the most. You get what you get and you don't get upset. So the kids all hung out together for like 3 years, like just day in and day out. And then I would go over and hang out, and she often had dinner for me, and just, yeah, I'm very grateful for that. We used to host a Christmas party every year, and they came to my Christmas party, and probably that night I was like, you are my people. So it was early in where I was like, and then as life evolved, like when they moved, then we went and visited them on holidays, so we'd spend really solid time. And previous to the accident, as much as we were very close, we didn't talk daily like now. Like we talk every day. Every morning we have coffee and talk about perspective and talk about life. But back then we would only connect like, once every couple months. And actually before the accident, when Chris had passed, I had done his eulogy with work. And so I read it to her. And she, not his eulogy, but just I spoke on behalf of PNGI. And anyway, she was there to support me in going through that. And then, like I say, less than 2 months later, we were totally in a different conversation than there. But so we didn't talk all the time, but when we connected. It was amazing. Yes.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. In 2024, the average commute time for work for regular commuters in Canada was 26.4 minutes, returning to the pre-pandemic levels. Commuting times varied across the country, with Toronto having the longest average commute at 33.3 minutes. Let us rejoin the conversation with co-founder of Project Bestie, Shanna Braden.
I'm born in Vancouver, and eventually, when I was about 10 years old, my family moved to the Okanagan, and I went all through school in Kelowna, and then got married there and had 2 beautiful kids and lived in a few different areas of the city, and then eventually it just outgrew us. We were looking to make a move, and an interesting job opportunity was asked of Bill with a buddy of his from high school. Up here, he had purchased some land along the Skeena River, and there was some big dreams that were going to go into the building of that. And my husband Bill had recently had a heart attack, and so we were looking for some changes in our life. And he said to me, "The day our house is worth $500,000, we're out of here." And we laughed, and we put a sign up, and it sold the next day. Loaded up the family and the truck and the camper and the moving van, and moved across the province up here to the middle of what we thought at that time was nowhere. We didn't have any friends other than the one employer. And it was awesome, because in Kelowna, with all of our families, there was a lot of family obligatory dinners and those kinds of things. And this was an opportunity for just the 4 of us to really meld as a family. The girls were 6 and 4, I believe, when we first moved here. And I didn't have to go to work. Enabled me to stay home too after the sale of our place. So, and I got to do what I wanted to do and just be mom, it was a beautiful opportunity at that time. When we actually rolled through town with our envoy of moving vehicles, it was Terrace Riverboat Days. And I couldn't believe the people were out, and it was beautiful, and everybody was walking. And I'm like, oh, wow, this town is so interested in exercise, and these people are so vibrant. They're all out and having these festivals. It's such a great town. And, what I learned later was that maybe the demographic didn't have what Kelowna had, and meaning that Kelowna is a very flashy, very materialistic town. And when we came to Terrace, a lot of people didn't even have vehicles, and so that's why they were walking and whatnot. But so it was quite a surprise, and it was a massive change. However, we met some incredible friends, and the people of Terrace are good people. So yeah, even though the job didn't pan out more than a couple of years, 2.5 years or something, and we decided that we were too remote and moved back down south over to Vancouver Island. Yeah, we were sad to have to leave it, but the economic times were tough at Terrace at that time, and there wasn't a lot of work, and outside of this other job that fell through, and we decided it was time to move on. But the greatest attribute of Terrace, outside than its physical beauty, was definitely the good people of Terrace, and meeting Christy and her family. Yeah, lucky to have put our kids in gymnastics together, right, to have this beautiful friendship. And when things took a turn for me, I had a best friend that was there to support me through the whole thing. And between the two of us, we sort of, we worked our way through a really traumatic time. And Christy had a lot of experience from PNGI and being working in the social work sector. And yeah, she was always there for me. Phone call away.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Last year, during the Pain to Power Forum, Shauna discussed a personal tragic loss of her family and how she built herself back into a functioning, progressive human. Let us return to the conversation with Shauna.
Family of 4, two beautiful girls, 15 and 17 years old, living in Vancouver Island. Had just gone away to a trip to Mexico and had the time of our lives as the family. And then January 21st in 2018 was a day that everything just got shattered. And I lost my husband and my 15-year-old daughter in a tragic quadding accident. And it took us out right at the knees, myself and my other daughter, older daughter, Kenzie. And it has been quite a journey and a long road clawing our way back from that trauma and trying to do anything and everything just to feel better.
Yeah, and that's what we were kind of talking about from the event last time, was like, what can we do now? Because going through that journey of loss was incredibly difficult to watch. It was incredibly difficult to participate in. And I was very lucky to have this beautiful friend who just intuitively went through this grieving process with the most grace and beauty and love and humor. So I remember I received a phone call. It was on a Sunday from a friend of Shanna's, and I remember my daughter called me because it was the home phone. And you know when the home phone is called, I mean, maybe not today because there's telemarketers, but back in the day when the home phone was ringing, it was generally not very for a good thing. Anyway, so I got the phone call, and my daughter and I had to make a decision if we were going to go down to the island. And so my daughter really wanted to go, and I really wanted to protect her because I had this feeling that we were going to walk into the most horrible experience of our life. And although there's a piece of that we did, our lives completely changed from that. What we walked into was this beautiful space with so much love and so much heart and beauty and community.
From the very beginning, Kenzie and I were split wide open. And essentially a massive group of friends and coworkers and neighbors just lifted us right up and just carried us along while we floated for the first weeks and months after the loss. And having Christy and Maya there was unforgettable.
We think of that time as the blur. And so unfortunately we have friends who are going through some traumatic experiences because that's life, we've learned. And we're watching just in that knowing of the blur, in that knowing of your body takes one step in front of the other to get through to the next day, and yet there's like nothing.
It's a massive amount of fog and sleeping and chaos and ringing in the ears, and you don't even feel your body. It was my personal experience. Right away, one of the first things we did was go to see our doctor, and they prescribed us what they usually prescribe people in this situation, which was some sleeping medication and various other medications. And so we took those, all desperately trying to feel better. And quite honestly, all that happened was a bigger fog for a longer period of time, and I found that I could not make a single decision. I couldn't drive my vehicle. I desperately couldn't function. And so I made a decision right then and there that that was a problem. And I began to feel that I was going to be the best mom I possibly could for my daughter, making up for the loss. And I was highly motivated to be the best person I could, so that when she decided to go through her grief period, I would be there for her, and I'd be all schooled up with all the latest tools and be able to look after her. So I went into grief quite enthusiastically, and I wanted everything and anything to work. I found that I had to get off those prescription drugs, and found my own way.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Grief is a grief and mourning experience following the death of someone important to you. While it's an inevitable part of life, something that virtually all of us go through at some point, losing someone you love can be one of the most painful experiences you'll ever have to endure. In this final segment of Open Connection, let us rejoin the conversation with Shauna.
Privately, I would say that I found cannabis because it was something that would make me feel better in the interim and then would leave my body quickly, and gave me the opportunity to have some clarity for hours at a time when the other meds were not. And so I made that choice, and I also decided to find some counseling. Luckily for me, and I know not everybody's experience is the same, but my job offered me a benefit package, and I was able to utilize counseling. And I walked into the counseling office, and the lady said, "Oh, Shan, I've been waiting for you." And she said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Oh, gosh, I just need you to help me feel better." And that was my mantra for going forward.
Yeah. And we've had lots of dialogue because Shanna had a lot of community, a lot of support, so she was able to try many different modalities of healing tools. And what we recognize is, we see the whole world wants to feel better, especially right now. And the gratitude of you being able to try different tools, and we have this advocacy for affordable healing tools for everybody.
Not everybody has the same opportunity, and what happens if you don't have an employer with benefit package? Our current system is failing us around the mental health crisis. We have massive homelessness, we have housing cost crisis, living crisis, we have nursing crisis, we have crisis after crisis, and opioid crisis and what have you, and people are really struggling out there. So we have decided that we want to be advocates for affordable healing, just like Christy said, so that everybody gets this opportunity to have the tools that you need to move forward. Otherwise, if you choose not to, you're stuck in that loop for the rest of your life, just continuing to feel that sickness in your belly and that panic and that fear. And I just knew I couldn't live there, so I had to make some changes.
And I remember, like, right away after the accident, I was quite spiritual, but Shanna and I never really talked about spirituality previous to the accident. Like, I really have a lot of gratitude for Megan, Shanna's daughter, and I thank her every day for teaching me how to live consciously. Because previous to that, we were just doing life. And so we never talked about spirituality, we never talked about religion, because it just wasn't in our radar. And so after the accident, I had said to Shanna, it's okay, babe, like, they're here. And it was very triggering for her, and I didn't know why. She later came to tell me that
Bill and I, thought we were atheists, and I think an atheist, it was a pretty strong term for the way we felt. I think that we were just heavy skeptics, at least I certainly was, and I didn't believe in life after death and just had no experience around it. But in this instance, I wanted to have
communication, hope.
Have hope that I might see them again one day. And that was a really big piece of spirituality, really opened up the possibilities.
So when we were in May, it was about May, so we're now 3 months after the accident, and as I had mentioned, Shanna's community was so massive, she was never on her own. And so May was the first time I went to visit her, and it was just her and I. And it was at that point that she was just like, babe, I need to know my baby girl is okay. Like, I really need a sign. I need to know that there's more than just this. And so me, as I love human behavior. I work with people, and I've worked with people for years, and I'm always curious about why people do what they do. And so as Shanna had mentioned, she was in quite a fog. And what was interesting for me as somebody who's interested in human behavior is that I would watch her brain physically only allow her to feel certain pieces for certain times, because the trauma and pain was so astronomical that she could only take little pieces of the grief. Every day we would make a plan at nighttime, and every morning she would go off on a totally different freaking ramp. But one night she was getting ready and she says, I really have this strong urge to go to the beach tomorrow. We're like, yeah, okay, that's awesome. Sure. What time are we going to go out? She looked it up. I think it was like 10:08 was low tide or something. And so I kind of anticipated that this is what was going to happen, as it did every time. And so we get up in the morning and we're sitting there having coffee and we're super chill. And it's like 9:30 and all of a sudden she becomes extremely adamant that we have to leave. And Shanna lives in Campbell River. And so when you drive down her street, it goes right to the ocean. And there's a beach right there, and we often go there. But on this particular day, she was like on this mission to go to this specific location. And so we get there and we're walking, and this beach is massive, low tide. There was hundreds and hundreds of feet.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our destiny within. I'm Robert Pictou.